Fans, this is JD of Bvtvnews, and I'm back to give y'all the latest and greatest news in the sport of boxing. With that being said, man, if this is your first time at the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as that notification bell so you are updated on our latest releases, which is typically about every single day. Now that we got that out of the way, I want to speak a little bit about the latest between Shakur Stevenson and Bill Haney. But before we get there, over the weekend, we had young up-and-comer Floyd Schofield, 21 years of age, on a rise to the top in the 135-pound division, and he was in there with Estudi Suero, and it was easily the dirtiest fight that I've seen in a long while due to Suero's tactics. Y'all check out how dirty Suero got in this bout. Suero did end up getting disqualified in the bout. I'm glad that that ended up happening because there's no need to keep another fighter like Schofield in the ring when you got somebody like Suero who is teetering on the line of really harming another fighter due to his tactics, low blows, picking him up, putting him in the headlock. I mean, it was getting out of hand. So I'm glad that Schofield got out of that unscathed. He did get the headbutt that left the gash. That happened in the first round. But overall, I expect that a young 21-year-old Schofield will recover, and he'll be back in the ring for Golden Boy sometime later on in 2024. Now, let's speak a little bit on Shakur Stevenson and who I call probably one of my favorite characters in the sport, Mr. Bill Haney, the father and manager of Devin the Dream Haney. Now, the one thing I love about boxing, and this is different than some of your other team sports that are out there, like football, basketball, soccer, hockey, you name it, is with boxing, it is the soap opera that just keeps on giving. There is no off season. In other sports, you have a lull, you got a downtime where everybody goes home, no action is going on, and you're just kind of chilling with your family. But when it comes to the sport of boxing, there is never a dull moment. There is always somebody saying something about the next person, going at it on social media, and looking to make the biggest and best bouts in the sport of boxing. And this goes from January all the way to December, and I love it. And that is really, really something that's different than other sports. And so that brings us to Shakur Stevenson and Bill Haney. Now, Shakur Stevenson has put it out there in the universe that if somehow, some way, Ryan Garcia can't make it to the ring on April 20th at the Barclays Center, he is ready to step in at a moment's notice and face Devin the Dream Haney. Now, naturally, after Shakur Stevenson has gone out there and confirmed that and put that out there in the atmosphere, that Mr. Bill Haney had to have a rebuttal and a response, and naturally, he did have one. Y'all check out what Bill Haney had to say in response to Shakur Stevenson. So now, naturally, these two, they're no strangers to going back and forth on social media. Bill has asserted that they sent Shakur Stevenson a contract offer back some time ago, and that there was never a counter offer made, and nothing ever came of it. And so now, of course, Bill Haney is saying that he's not now going to negotiate at all with Shakur Stevenson, and he's going to look to negotiate with a Bob Arum when it comes to making a bout at some point down the line with Devin the Dream Haney and Shakur Stevenson. Now, with the whole idea surrounding the April 20th replacement scenario, I'm going to be honest, man. We all know that's not going to happen, man. Even if Ryan Garcia were to pull out or back out or not get cleared by the New York State Athletic Commission, Devin the Dream Haney is not going to swap out a Ryan Garcia and put in an elite top pound for pound fighter like a Shakur Stevenson at a moment's notice like that. Because just like, what with other sports, in boxing, when you begin a training camp, you begin training and you're working on a specific game plan for that specific fighter that you're facing at the end of that training camp. You're not going in there doing a bunch of general strategies that would apply to any fighter. You're going into that training camp specifically wanting to work on skills that would nullify the strengths of the fighter that you're going to face off against. So if Devin the Dream Haney has spent weeks and weeks looking to face off against a Ryan Garcia, it's not to say that they might not call up a replacement fighter. If Ryan Garcia, pulls out, they might still try to save the card, but you're not going to replace a Ryan Garcia with another elite fighter like Shakur Stevenson. So, I respect Shakur Stevenson for raising his hand and saying that he's willing to get in there, but from a realistic, rational perspective, that ain't happening, bro. It ain't gonna happen. The best we can hope for is that later on down the line, you all make a bout together and it goes down later on. Now, with that being said, with Shakur Stevenson, he is an interesting fighter right now in the sport of boxing, because with Shakur Stevenson, we are witnessing how he just can't seem to get some of the most elite fighters in the ring with him. Heck, he's even having trouble getting other top ranked fighters in the ring with him. Look at Vasily Lomachenko and look at a George Kambosos Jr., who the two of them opted to face off against each other instead of either of them deciding to get into the ring with a Shakur Stevenson. So Shakur Stevenson is even having trouble getting top ranked fighters that have name and experience in the ring with him. And I've always said, that in order to become the A side, and that's what Shakur is trying to get to. He's trying to get to a point where he is the A side. When you're not the A side, a lot of fighters will often be in a position where they won't face you because they understand the risk that you pose, but from a money standpoint, because there still is the business element of it, there still is prize fighting on a level, they won't want to get in the ring with you. That's also one of the things we see happening nonstop with Jaron Boots Ennis. I would say that Shakur Stevenson and Boots Ennis are kind of in the same boat when it comes to that. And so with Shakur, in a lot of fighters, I think there's two ways that you get to the A side, right? And you can move away from, trying to raise your hand and clamor for this bout and that bout. One way you get to the A side would be kind of the way that we saw a Gervonta Tank Davis get to the A side. Even though, out of those top dogs that we knew were at 135, even though Tank Davis has only faced Ryan Garcia, remember there was Teofimo Lopez, Devin the Dream Haney, and then there's Tank, and then now there's Shakur. Even though Tank only faced off against Ryan Garcia, he's still an A side in the sport, but he got to the A side because you can still get there if you face off against good opponents and you look spectacular and you're highly entertaining. So while maybe Mario Barrios isn't top pound for pound, Rolly Romero isn't top pound for pound, Isak Cruz isn't top pound for pound, Tank is still an A side and a draw in the sport because every time he hops into the ring, you know that there's going to be some fireworks going down when Tank Davis gets in the ring. Flat out, hands down, you know that if you put down some money for a pay-per-view, that a Tank Davis fight will deliver. Now, I flip that back to Shakur Stevenson because if you're not going to get those top named opponents in the ring so that you can look spectacular and win against them, which could take you to the A side, the other avenue is you got to be highly entertaining. You got to be somewhat of a knockout artist, somebody who pushes the pace, somebody who everybody can count on is going to be highly entertaining every single time out. So with that being said, part of the knock on Shakur is things like the last fight with Edwin De Los Santos. Those are the fights that people will bring up, and they'll try to use that to diminish Shakur Stevenson's value. Now, I personally believe he's hands down one of the top pound-for-pound fighters in the sport of boxing. But one thing that I do believe with Shakur Stevenson is that he's not going to ever be your demolisher like a Tank Davis. I don't think he'll ever be the fighter who's going to walk people down, go toe-to-toe, take punishment to give punishment. I think that Shakur is always going to be a tactician. He's going to be a savvy ring general, and he's going to thoroughly outthink you with his IQ and outbox fighters. That's going to be kind of, I think, the MO of somebody like Shakur Stevenson. But if you fight that way, that's excellent. But it is going to be on Bob Arum to get the top elite people in the ring so that Shakur Stevenson can look excellent against them. And eventually, over time, after 2, 3, 4 victories, become that A side. So that now, you no longer have a Shakur Stevenson, trying to raise his hand as a replacement for a Devin the Dream Haney fight, or not trying to chase down this fighter or that fighter. Everybody will be clamoring to come face off against Shakur Stevenson because they know that he's the A side. They'll make the biggest payday. And so now at that point, there's no more chasing anybody else. You'll get to that true Canelo Alvarez, Gervonta Tank Davis status where fighters at this point are clamoring to face off against Canelo or Tank because they know A, it'll be their highest payday ever, and B, even if you get defeated and you look decent, you still gain stock in the fans' eyes, even if you look decent against Tank or Canelo. So overall, I'm rooting for Shakur Stevenson. I believe he's one of the most skilled fighters in the sport. We will see what happens with the July 6th date that Bob Arum has talked about. There's been talks about potentially facing off against Zepeda. But we'll see if Bob Arum and Oscar De La Hoya really sit down and hash that out and really make that bout for the fans. I think that's an excellent bout for Shakur because Zepeda is another undefeated fighter at 135 that is highly regarded. And so those are the fights that Shakur Stevenson needs that can be true showcase bouts that will start to take him over to that A side from being the B side. But y'all let me know what y'all think, about Shakur Stevenson and what will be his next bout. Can he get to that point where he really becomes the A side and he doesn't have to be in that position where he's, chasing everybody down, waving his hand, trying to get in the ring for these big, massive bouts. But let me know what y'all think. Please make sure that you subscribe, hit that notification bell so you are updated on our latest content that again drops almost daily. And until next time, man, this is JD of BVTV News. Deuces.